Hello and welcome to another episode of Mole React. Today we are watching Jonathan Ferguson, aka Firearms Expert, reacts to Warhammer 40k Darktide guns. Jonathan Ferguson has been doing this for years for Gamespot, and normally we have been doing this live on my channel when I was streaming. Unfortunately, last time Jonathan has been showcasing a lot of real guns, and he was handling real guns quite a bit on cam, and apparently YouTube doesn't like that. No, YouTube doesn't like that at all. My channel got actually banned because I was showing real firearms. Now, I wasn't really, I was watching with my community like how a curator of a museum was like comparing real firearms with firearms in the video game, and YouTube was like like that has bad potential. If you're like, wait, why is YouTube not allowing this? Because there is the potential of somebody is streaming their killing spree. It has happened before, and the system cannot distinguish that. It cannot see the difference. Like the AI basically in the background is too stupid for that, or the algorithm. And with that, they're just like, okay, if there's a firearm shown too long on the screen, we have to assume somebody is preparing for a killing spree, and we would just shut you down, right? So this is how I got basically banned. Just a warning. It was not crazy, but it was just a warning. And because of that, we will now watch those videos as a video. So no live reaction, which is probably not bad because it will also help my new channel here, which is my React channel, right? And so if you're new to the channel, you want to see more React videos, like one of the biggest reaction showcases will come up here in just a few days with the Game Awards. There will be tons of clips here on the channel, so prepare your butts. And I'm looking forward to watch this because I'm playing also a lot of Warhammer 40k Darktide right now. I'm a huge Warhammer 40k lore nerd, so I'm really happy how they have been just bringing all those weapons to life in the video. And as far as I know, Jonathan is actually also a Warhammer 40k fan. And let's watch this together, shall we? And let's just see how this goes. Let's go. Oh yeah, you can take a really
First
nice look at the
impressions,
weapon.
very good. This looks like a functional, believable firearm, albeit a bit chunky and bulky for what it's firing, which appears to be conventional brass case centerfire ammunition. Otherwise, we've got proper controls. We've got a left-hand charging handle, a proper magazine catch. A game like this would typically just have the player rip the magazine out of the gun magically and shove in another one. But this has a thumb catch on the left side for you
Yes,
to
it
operate.
is.
Now, the aiming of this does not let you use the sights by the look of it. This is much more like an old school FPS rifle where it just maybe zooms your view in a bit and reduces your dispersion.
It depends on the weapon
ADSing.
for
Design-wise,
ADSing.
it's hard to deny that it doesn't resemble an AK, or maybe more like a Saiga sporting rifle with that left-hand charging handle, or Saiga shotgun even with how bulky the magazine is. But it's spitting out sort of elongated 5.56 adjacent cartridge cases. Again, I'm not sure why in the future you would want a longer case. I would expect, if we're still using, for some bizarre reason, conventional ammunition, that the propellant would be uber efficient and the cartridges could be really, really small.
Because the answer for that is pretty simple from a purely Warhammer 40k lore, is what you're looking at is not a military weapon. This is basically a weapon which has been used quite a bit in hive cities and by a lot of gangs, right? Of course, it can be used for military purposes as per usual, because, well, like the Warhammer 40k lore, if you have never dabbled into that, is a very bizarre place. There's a lot of futuristic stuff, like they even have laser guns, plasma guns, right? They are using them, but interestingly enough, the las guns, as they're being called in the lore, are not that effective. Against the enemies mankind is fighting in Warhammer 40k, you would assume that las guns are like really effective because lasers, right? And it just turns out it isn't. So like Warhammer 40k is borderline realistic and borderline goofy at the same time. So if you were seeing a lot of things where you're like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Why are we doing this in 40,000 Millennium? And it's just like, yeah, because it's metal, it's stupid, it's fun, it's Warhammer 40k. Like, they are doing this mix quite a bit. But let's continue. And everything is bulky.
I would probably call this a machine pistol rather than a submachine gun. Not just because it's compact, but because it does not have a shoulder stock, or indeed, I think, provision for it. The design of this thing really does look suitably Warhammer. What I'm noticing here,
very bulky.
Obviously, the Warhammer series goes back into well into the 1980s, 40k specifically, and so you have a sci-fi aesthetic rooted in
early 1980s,
and so you wouldn't have any Picatinny rails. You wouldn't have little sort of learned details like the magazine catch.
They're trying.
Shroud around.
They are updating their weapons quite a bit.
That looks to be a lift from the FN Scar or a similar modern rifle, and it's on the auto rifle. It's on this SMG as well. So little details like that, where I suppose they're sort of like they're retcons, very very minor retcons, but the original weapons from the first couple of decades of this franchise, needless to say, wouldn't have had those features of modern firearms.
Yeah.
Now they haven't gone wild. They haven't made this stuff look like Call of Duty, which is great. Point is, a lot of these things are going to be designed to look cool and interesting, but then we do have these little hints of the present day, notably the Picatinny rail attachment system, which isn't just cosmetic, of course. It's part of the gameplay, and I'm absolutely certain that I'm going to see some optical sights as well.
Yes. The flamethrower. Brother, bring the melter. The heavy melter.
Flamethrower,
so chunky.
Flamer, whatever you want to call it.
Flamer,
incinerator unit. Definitely something I associate with this universe. It's hard to give a flame projector presence because there are no working parts, there's no case ejection, the muzzle flash is literally the whole event here. That in itself is pretty impressive. But
the holy trinity in Warhammer 40k.
Flame reaches a surface,
Flamer,
and it burns. That's
melter.
The big deal
Bolter?
is this is
Damn it.
thickened fuel.
I always forget what the last one is. I'm so bad at that.
That happens to be on fire. So it doesn't just create heat damage and then stop creating heat damage. Continues to burn, and we see that to great effect.
Yeah, it's great.
Two main methods of use for this thing as well, and because of that burning effect, kind of want to share the love a bit and give short bursts to a number of weaker enemies, and then focus your main burst of fire onto the bigger ones, or something of that nature. Well, this appears to have automated that process, so you've got the ability to deliberately squirt short bursts and then to give it the full blast when you need to. That might have a relevance in terms of not the spool up time, but typically a game.
I think they depicted it really well in the game.
Start spraying that flame, which is actually realistic. That's how it should work. And so if it has an automated short dash version of its own fire, if that makes sense, then you can effectively do that. Whereas if you're trying to like preempt and hold the fire button and let it off to only get a short burst, that could potentially be frustrating. So that's my take. I think they've tried to move things on a little bit with the flamethrower. This time I thought I'd show you, a couple of things. This is the number 5 Mark 1.
What the hell is that?
Projector.
The projector.
What the Brits called it. It's the gun bit of the flamethrower. Really, all this is doing is directing where the
now I see it.
Fuel
I was like, wait, that's a flamethrower, and then really of course,
it's missing. We don't have
the big
that
bit
pack for this, unfortunately.
Now,
the other flamethrower that I wanted to show you is not a flamethrower.
What?
Literally, it says on the box. We have the box too.
This is not a flamethrower.
This was literally a weed burning gun that you can buy in Lidl, housed in a sci-fi airsoft gun casing. You can even see where the magazine would have gone for the airsoft gun. So it kind of looks the part as a pop culture sci-fi flamethrower, albeit it looks a bit too clean and
honey, I go to Target buying a weed burner.
40K. An interesting bit of,
and then you come back with a flamethrower
that we thought we should preserve, even if it's not a flamethrower.
Oh, the grenade launcher. which you can also use as a melee weapon, which is actually not that
This
great.
thing is a lot of fun. This is a semi-automatic grenade launcher of some kind that is, I think it's described as a gauntlet. And
Yes.
that sort of fits. In
Grenade
that
gauntlet.
Some of the receiver wraps around the hand. You can see this. You don't need me to tell you that. Which allows it to be used, and I guess where the gauntlet part really comes in, it can be used by these massive dudes as a melee weapon. He's certainly firing it with both hands when he's actually firing.
Quick note on the Ogryns. The Ogryns are basically a mutated part of humanity. Only male, but they're also sterile. They cannot have any offsprings. Like as I said, it's only a mutated version you can get. But the really interesting about the Ogryns is they're very strong, like super strong. They could even like, depending on the Ogryn and in the Space Marine, they could go toe-to-toe with a Space Marine when it comes to brutal strength. The problem with an Ogryn is, and why I see like a lot of people complaining a little bit how cheap some of the weapons of the Ogryn look, and how the mechanics look kind of cheap with the Ogryn, that's by design, because Ogryns are stupid. Like they have the IQ of a 6-year-old, or 4-year-old even, right? And you keep in mind that you have a whole like army of Ogryns, and you would have to explain not just how their weapons work, but also tactics, and try to do that to a 4 or 6-year-old, and you will realize very quickly that there is not much of it, right? And so a lot of the weapons are very bulky, very sturdy for the Ogryns, so they cannot break it because they sometimes don't understand their own strength. But also, on the other hand, very easy to use. There are tons of weapons who don't have a lot of like reload mechanism, where they're literally just ripping out the magazine and punching another one in, or they are sometimes even taking out the trigger and they just put a button there so that the Ogryns can just push the button and things happen, because they're just not mentally capable of understanding finer weapon design, right? So Ogryns are very interesting because they are so strong, and if the Empire ever would learn to maximize the power of Ogryns by just having like armies of those, they would be like serious business. But because of the IQ and like just the mental fortune a lot of like of the Ogryns have, it's just not feasible, right?
As a grenade launcher. But then when he goes to town and clobbers people, it's just a one-handed weapon. Behaves, I would say, and even sounds a lot like something like an M32. Any repeating grenade launcher has that bloop sound, and that's somewhat realistic. You can see that it has an arcing trajectory, but it's quite flat, so you're not having to artificially compensate for drop.
Yeah, again, like the Ogryn is not capable of that, really.
High explosive. Even then, you don't. It's got a bit too much.
They did a really good job to put that into the lore.
So we want firepool. There's quite a cool smoke after effect after the flame, which is realistic. If it did contain some kind of incendiary capability like that, you would see some smoke come off it.
Oh, the bolter. Oh boy. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go.
Right, so I'm on more familiar ground with this thing, because even I know about bolt guns or bolters. This has got to be a little diddy one for normal human-sized people.
No, it's actually
I'm getting from the information on the screen
not.
That you get automatic fire when hit-fired and semi-automatic.
And you will see very quickly why it's not
doesn't have a buttstock
designed for the small humans necessarily.
And from memory, I don't remember bolters even having one. I guess
they don't need a buttstock because it's made for a Space Marine.
In my head would be that he'd be able to hold this thing rock solid steady
Yes.
without having a buttstock. Not the case for ordinary people. So, but then if you put a buttstock on it, it doesn't really have the classic silhouette. This is a real closest we've got so far to a bolter in terms of this idea of rocket ammunition. It's very, very basic. It's a die-cast metal body with a simple steel tube set into that, and a rear-acting hammer that fires backward onto the nose of the round. It's not really a cartridge because it's a self-contained round.
Yes.
So the nose doesn't actually do anything, but that pushes it back onto the primer. It does have a center fire primer buried in here that you won't be able to see. That then fires the round, and then there are 4 base exhaust holes, and that's the exhaust that propels the round. That it's not the explosion inside.
It's a rocket
that's pushing the projectile. It's launching itself. It's literally a miniature rocket. So it accelerates over the hammer, recocking.
So again, for everyone who doesn't really know the Warhammer 40k lore, pretty simple. The bolter is a miniature rocket launcher. If you want to explain it that way, it's a miniature rocket launcher. You are shooting miniature rockets who are propelling themselves forward, and then most of the time they are entering the body part, giggity, and then just a second or two later they explode in a pretty brutal fashion. And again, like, they're made for Space Marines. They're not made for humans, but as everything in the Warhammer 40k universe at some point is ending up somehow in a hive city, and some puny humans at some point thought like, hey, look, I have a Space Marine weapon, I'm invincible, and they probably killed themselves by shooting the weapon because a bolter has some terrible kickback. But we will probably see that here in a second.
Comes up behind it, ready for firing. The tube is just a guide to get it on its way. It's the rotational stability of the rocket projectile that keeps it stable. Fascinating area of technology. This is a sort of highly stylized, idealized.
The big one. Yeah, this is the single shot, which is still kind of manageable. But the moment you are not going into single shot, yeah, even the reload time, it's like...
Okay, so I'm taking a keen interest in the ammunition here. Looking at the magazine, we can see it's double stack. It's very large, but then the projectiles are very large themselves. Or rockets, missiles, munitions, effectively. You can see that it has a centerfire primer. Something going on at the front that we don't have on the gyrojet round that is clearly whatever's containing the payload that blows people to shreds.
Yes.
Which is very impressive and very cool. So it's interesting.
It's hard to handle in game, like really hard to handle. I don't like it.
It's almost like calling them rockets is more like emphasis for their explosive capability. They're more like grenades. They're not really meaningfully rockets in the way that the gyrojet is. I don't think. You know, they don't fly.
It's really debatable what you want to call it.
They're not accelerating from the muzzle like a rocket would. They're firing like a miniature grenade round, and they behave like a miniature grenade round.
Well, they're not exploding normally on impact as they do it here. Like as I said, normally they are planned to bury themselves into the flash and then explode.
We move outside my area of expertise with direct
less
energy
guns.
Weapons, especially ones that are made up. There's no particular reason why an energy weapon, a laser weapon, would require to look quite so much like a conventional firearm, with the magazine where the magazine would normally be shaped much like it would normally be.
It's a
that
battery.
draws my attention is the sight. I like the fact that it's quite busy with switches and dials and what looks like some conduit or something on the right hand side. It separates it a bit from the generic Call of Duty modern day red dot sight. It's a little amusing that it has the what's known as the donut of death reticle from the EOTech with the circle with the 4 hash marks and the dot in the middle. Hey, if it works, keep it for 40,000 years. But the thing that's cool about this for me is the Gothic arch / church window.
Yeah, as I said, the last gun looks super effective for most enemies in the Warhammer 40k universe. It's rather ineffective, and you need a lot of last guns to make it work. It's like in today's standards, you might think, wow, that must be like one of the high-end weapons, huh? Like even the building of that weapon. No, the last gun is actually considered as one of the most cheapest weapon you can create, and they are mass produced at such a cheap level because that's what they are for, right? They are for the Imperial Guard and for planetary defense forces, and they're really just like the standard weapon, and it's super cheap to produce, super cheap to maintain. It's not like a very special weapon by all means.
Shape of the thing, great way to blend it in with
it works against normal humans. It works against normal humans. Yeah, this is like a perfect Ogrim weapon, I think, for what I said. Keep it simple as much as possible. Like, it doesn't have a trigger. It literally is just a button here they are pushing in. This is just getting ripped out, and then they are smashing in another one, because that's like the maximum they are trusting an Ogren in when it comes to handling a weapon. Just like that.
Oh, all right. So the impression here is, for me, as a filthy casual Warhammer person, is a bit Gears of War. But then I know as soon as I say that Gears of War is the thing that owes the debt to Warhammer.
Yes.
The other way around. But, yeah, different design aesthetic. But
yeah, Warhammer 40k, like as I said, early 80s.
Design aesthetic. Caring less about ergonomics. Chunky, it's blocky, it's got...
It has to be.
Or rivets all over it. Lots of big...
It has to be super chunky.
Stylized, pretty brutal looking bayonet. Not sure if that's where Ripper comes from, or if it's because of how it burst fires. So the description's telling me it's going to be burst and fully automatic, and that the bayonet's functional. So that's going to be interesting.
It is. I love that. This is such a good weapon.
Okay, I'm a bit slow on the uptake with this one, but it's clearly an automatic shotgun.
Yes.
The huge cartridge case is coming flying out the top of the gun. The bolt thing, it has a functional bolt on top. It reminds me of, and I forget which one it is, there's a riot gun, effectively, less lethal riot gun, that somebody actually posted online saying, real life 40k bolter. The way it works is very reminiscent, where you can see a lot of the action as it opens up, and it's a slow chugging rate of fire. That's designed for riot control. This is, I guess, potentially used for that. But with the bayonet on the front, probably not. It's just a short, steady, very chunky...
We're equipping riot guns now with bayonets. Spices up the whole rioting a bit.
The 1897 trench gun had a bayonet. As to how the bayonet functions, it's such a short gun that he's just having to just push it out in front of him. Bayonet fighting with modern firearms is very much a last-ditch, a psychological weapon. Here, it's a key function of how the weapon works.
I mean, it's Warhammer 40k. The combat shotgun, one of the most, well, some people would say, broken weapons in the game, and very strong.
All right, first impressions.
Because of some bugs it has.
Very familiar to me. I don't know if it's because I've seen it in something Warhammer, or if it just looks like something.
There's a picture.
So the front half is highly stylized, very blocky, very Warhammer. Even the front grip,
which is being
discern,
shown quite a bit if you're looking it up with Warhammer 40k. Where there is an enforcer, aka their police force, using that weapon.
Semi-pistol grip shotgun buttstock. It does have a rib across the top, which is a feature of shotgun barrels, but here the rib extends all the way across over the body as well.
Yep. And it switches to a different ammunition.
In use,
more or less, when you are ADSing.
Very shotgunny, pretty conventional in terms of its effect.
It doesn't show it too much at the beginning, and you have to learn
the way
it.
It operates is nice though. What's remarkable, I think, is the alt fire here, where we're taking advantage of the ability of a shotgun to fire different rounds. It's very rare that games do model that. Some of them more realistic.
It has actually three different ammunition.
For a sci-fi game, pretty interesting that they've...
Like, there is a special ammunition you can also shove in.
They have somewhat justified the existence of a manual pump on this thing. Something that I do occasionally whinge about is, why would you have a pump action on a future shotgun when we have self-loading shotguns already? They're making use of it here to let you alt fire by inserting the special round. Now, a lesser game would have you just pull the trigger and you get that secondary effect. They are here having the player character manually cycle that special round into the gun. Because by loading it, you've only loaded it. You haven't cycled.
There is a lot of detail in Darktide, which is always impressive. How realistically they are trying to be.
Then you get your special shot. The actual effect being shown, again, is a real effect. That the spreading of shot at a certain height, that's achieved with, well, either a highly specialized choke at the end of the gun or an actual external duckbill nozzle attachment. It can't make it spread wider like this is. It can only constrain the top of the shot pattern. So a duckbill attachment turns a pattern like this into a pattern like this. This gun turns a pattern like, say, this into a pattern like this. Based in a real thing, exaggerated and exaggerated.
Always exaggerated.
And I'm not sure how it would be a thing, but answers on the usual virtual postcard.
Oh, this gun. This is ridiculous.
No need for fancy. Neutralize the Rager!
Okay, another last gun, very reminiscent of the ordinary one in the game, but with different barrel, an oddly old-fashioned looking wooden shotgun style buttstock with a exaggerated.
Looks like a
butt plate.
musket
So the core
version.
system seems to be the same as what I've seen. The other thing I noticed is the gameplay ability to charge up a shot with the little meters there. That would seem to tie in with the massive radiator on the barrel of this thing, which is very much like the old 1914 French Hotchkiss gun. If you look up a picture of that, has a gigantic radiator in approximately the same place on the barrel. Possibly even an inspiration for them, I don't know. If this is a laser weapon you can charge up that has to contain heat, then a radiator on the barrel makes sense. Makes it look different. Now the bayonet and that shotgun style buttstock give this thing a real... This thing reminds you of the 1897, the Winchester 1897 trench gun from the First World War. Admittedly, you don't get the full capability, and it has that green, angular, futuristic look that a lot of the weapons in this game do, but it's sort of topped and tailed with bayonet, shotgun buttstock. The overall length is very reminiscent of that as well.
I love the huge battery display always. It's so unnecessary. The revolver, another weapon which is highly debated to be completely shit or really strong.
Game revolver that really looks different. You can tell it's a revolver from, well, I guess, the grip shape and the cylinder, but they've tried to change up a lot of this thing, so it's not just yet another Magnum. We've got a bit of detail. There is a hammer. There are cylinder stop notches in the cylinder, which is how this thing works, although the trigger is not capable of double action fire. Now, based on the description, semi-automatic, technically a revolver cannot be, well, it can be, before people correct me in the comments, but the vast majority of revolvers are not semi-automatic. They just fire at one shot per pull of the trigger because you're pulling the trigger all the way back. There isn't enough travel, there isn't enough trigger length here for this
trigger finger
other than single action.
Training that with a revolver.
I will let them off. Something about that circular trigger guard / trigger housing and the flatness of this frame is reminding me of something. I think I'm thinking of, and goodness knows if this is an inspiration or not, but given that a version appeared in The Mandalorian, maybe, the Bergman semi-automatic pistols have that style of circular trigger guard. It's a reach, but that's where my brain is going. Let's see how this thing operates. In operation, this is reminding me of big, smooth cylinder, very large rounds, only 5 fitting in the cylinder. Got to be something like.
I love that they have revolvers in the game
honestly,
because
the reload is.
They don't really play a big role in a lot of Warhammer 40k.
For a game of this nature, break action. Needless to say,
you don't see it too much in action,
to hold in the unfired rounds,
which is unfortunate.
With the thumb, which is not very efficient, but would work, and they've bothered to try, which is nice. It appears to have an ejector star in the center of the cylinder that doesn't get used, and there's some kind of a rod up front under the barrel that I thought was going to come into play. So maybe the user is just ignoring that and using gravity. The rear sight is a bit curious. It has 2 big adjustment knobs on it for unknown purposes. That would tend to be for some sort of elevation and windage adjustment. You wouldn't need both if it was just one. This clearly isn't a target revolver, so I don't really know why those are there.
It just makes it look more bulky. I think that is a pretty good explanation for it. Just make it look more bulky. And it wins.
Whoa, this thing is a bit left field. There are those...
The twin-linked heavy stubber. I love it. It's useless. I love it.
I'm sorry.
No, it's actually good.
Linked rounds. This is a belt.
It's very specific.
I'm not seeing how those rounds get diverted into what is apparently an upper and a lower barrel. The barrels have very chunky heat shields on them that bring to mind a number of designs. I suppose the Browning M2.
Yeah, the Browning M2 for sure.
Leap to mind, especially as this is called heavy. I've got no sense of scale, but I think, given the rounds, they're probably going to be 50 cal or equivalent. In fact, they look a lot like
probably
BMG.
Yeah.
Though from a profile view, you can only see the one belt, and I'm thinking, they fudged it. They're just diverting rounds up and some down. No, this is actually reminiscent of a couple of our anti-aircraft mounts that we have in the collection here at the Royal Armouries, where you have, well, the one I'm thinking of is 4 guns, and you have feed chutes.
I've never seen
running
that.
From belt
That looks cool.
boxes, side by side, at different heights, into the different guns. Basically, exactly like this, because this is 2 guns that happen to be screwed together.
Probably glued together. No Warhammer 40k.
Fore and aft, but that makes sense because the feed region of the gun has to align with the belt. So to actually offset the top one to the rear does actually make some sense. So what looked like a pretty
Again, they
silly
put
design,
like a lot of
for
thought
somebody
into
who
this.
has a tremendous amount of strength, is starting to make some sense.
Yeah.
Funny.
It really is. Like, they put like a lot of thoughts into their guns. It might sound silly at first, but then you are looking closer at it and you are like, actually?
All right, so our twin fire modes here are pretty intriguing, actually. It's akin to deploying a bipod in a more realistic FPS. So we're getting a reduced dispersion when we flip out the handle and brace the thing.
And it feels amazing.
Which is
It really
logical.
gives you the
I have
feeling of
noticed
power.
Something that detracts somewhat from the realism, as if we care about the realism. But the cocking handle on the top, yeah, okay, that's accessible for the gun on the top. How are we cocking the gun on the bottom? I imagine it's a case of the cocking handle
You do both.
would go straight through the bolt of the top
Yes.
gun and be physically attached to the bolt of the bottom gun in a different location, and sheer brute strength means you can cock them both
Yes.
from one charging handle. That's what I'm going with.
That's exactly what it is. Because Ogrins. It's just, strength is not a problem. Technology is a problem. It sounds funny, but
Right, this
make
is
it as
very
child-friendly as
all the
possible
guns
for an
we've looked
Ogrin.
at. I think it's safe to say this is the only one that is based on a real gun.
Mm-hmm.
This is a Warhammer M79. Now, although the sight doesn't get used, this clamped-on sight arrangement is
Again,
almost identical.
I don't
It's on
really
the same
believe
place
that an
in the barrel,
Ogrin
and
would
it's
know how
dictated
to
by the
utilize the
ladder.
sight,
The real
really.
thing, you press this catch, and this thing will is deployable.
Like-
in the game, it just kind of sits there looking cool and flapping up and down. But
Yeah.
it's remarkably similar. From here forward, almost identical. It looks like they've replaced some of the wood. They have studied an M79 to create this weapon. If we open it up, you can see, but
Again,
the rifling
wood
in the barrel
can break.
is evident.
You
on
don't
the video
you don't
game
want an
version.
Ogrin to break your shit.
What can I say? it's an M79 in space.
Fair. Love the riot shield. I
Alright,
don't
guys,
have
I
the
hope you
riot shield
enjoyed
yet.
Our review of the guns
Yes,
of Warhammer
I did,
Darktide.
very much.
The more
Thank
I
you,
see of
Jonathan.
that game, the more I want to play it. As always, we at the
It's
Royal Armouries
great.
would love you to come and visit one of our physical museums. If you can't, we have our own YouTube channel that you're very welcome to come over and
Yes.
take a look at as well. Not just me on there. There is a fair bit of me.
It's
We've
a
also
Royal
got,
Armouries
social media, of
on
course,
YouTube.
you can check out, and some
You
events
should.
going on in the new year as well. All right, guys, take care.
Bye, Jonathan. This was great. I really enjoyed this. I hope I gave some interesting Warhammer 40k context to it. As I said, if you enjoyed me watching this, make sure to like the video, and also don't forget to subscribe. There will be more reaction videos coming up, especially this week with the Game Awards. I will have a lot. I will have a lot. So with that said, again, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and I hope I see you next time. Bye bye.